Okay, yes, parenting for happy family members. It is wonderful to be here today. I am interviewing Michelle Vina Baltsas. Now, Michelle is coming in as a guest expert, and as some of you know, I interview the guest experts in advance so that you have an opportunity to get to know them a little bit and what they're about, so that when they come into the group, you feel like you know them a bit already. Now, Michelle's passion is to help women free themselves from diet dogma. She is a food and body relationship specialist. So my first question, Michelle, Michelle, welcome to this interview.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
It's good to have you. So, Michelle, I mean, I've known you for about 6 months now, and you have this like wonderful message of kind of self-acceptance and really wanting women to kind of be able to kind of address their relationship with food, their relationship with themselves, particularly in terms of intuitive eating. So when you talk about women being free from diet dogma, what do you mean by diet dogma?
I mean to free themselves where they are not relying on diets really to sustain them and to make them feel good about themselves. Because 97% of the time, literally, diets don't work. And they work in that they oftentimes help people lose weight, but it's not long term. And so they get on this dieting cycle for their whole lives. Many women that I work with have been dieting, since their teens, and myself included, where their whole life becomes a diet, and they buy into this dogma that that's the only way to live, is to constantly be losing, gaining. And I help women break free of that and move more into an acceptance model, when they start to just take care of themselves a little bit better and find movement that brings pleasure into their lives and that they look forward to doing, and find foods that work for their bodies, that make them feel energized instead of like sluggish. And they just start to listen to those intuitive cues more, and also to eat when they're hungry, physically hungry, as opposed to eating for more emotional reasons. Miraculous things happen, and oftentimes one of the results is weight loss. And all of those beautiful things happen without a diet. But you have to release yourself from that. You have to be willing to let that go, which is not easy, because we're so conditioned to, oh, well, you're overweight, go on a diet, and my response to that is, okay, so you're not happy with your weight. How's your self-care? That's my first question. Are you listening to your body's cues, and things like that. So it's a shift in thinking.
Yeah. And I love that you're talking about self-care, because that's one of the founding principles within Yes Parenting, is that the first person you say yes to is yourself. You have to say yes to your own needs and take care of yourself if you're going to stand a chance of taking care of others. Now, you are a mum as well, and you're also a wife. You are an author and a coach. So, you have all these different things that you bring into this picture, which I love. And when you were just describing about your passion and what it means to free women from diet dogma, so much of what you described kind of echoed my life and my relationship with food, and also growing up with a mum who, my mum has dieted and her weight has yo-yoed for as long as I can remember. So, I'm 38 now. And I remember from being very young, my mum always thinking that whatever weight she was, she needed to lose weight, and going on diet after diet after diet. And then the weight would come off and then it would go on again. And so for me growing up with that, it was I had a lot of beliefs and stories and things like that around what it meant to be a healthy weight, about body issues, about food. So I've lived with an eating disorder for many years, which amazingly now I'm free from, all sorts of things. So I think that for so many women, this food and body topic can often be an issue.
Yes,
So
I agree.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about the kind of the emotional eating and this food obsession that seems to flow in and out of so many women's lives.
Yeah, it's a great topic. I think so many women are really afraid to feel, and that there is this huge disconnect for men too. But I mainly work with women, or only work with women, I should say. This disconnect between the mind and the body, and when there's that disconnect, a lot of people have emotional eating. They struggle with emotional eating. The feelings are too overwhelming for them. They disconnect and they reach for the food. And a lot of it at this point is becomes a habit, because they just don't know how to reconnect, And so instead of doing things that are probably more beneficial, like moving their body in a certain way, or journaling, or just listening to music to raise their vibe and bring that connection back, they reach for the food because it's there. It's always there. Food is, I shouldn't say always, but for most people, food is abundant, and let's face it, it tastes really good. I'm not going to lie. It tastes really good, and it calms you for a while. But when it's over, I call them emotional eating episodes, when that's over, you realize really that nothing was accomplished, and you haven't really gotten to the root of the issue. It's also not allowed you really to see any pattern that might have developed over time. And so while emotional eating is certainly not ideal, I will be the first to say that it happens sometimes, and I just made a video about this for my group, that it does happen sometimes. And you know what? The sky doesn't fall. The earth does not stop turning on its axis. It's just something that happens sometimes. If it becomes a chronic thing, I think it does need to be looked at, because I think it doesn't enable us to grow. We always refer to life as like an onion, and we keep, peeling back those layers. And my experience for decades with emotional eating was that I wasn't peeling back those layers because I was stunting my growth. And when I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore, I really wanted to get to what was leading me to the food. My whole life changed. That willingness became paramount to me. And I grew in ways that were amazing, and I was able to do things with my life that I never imagined possible, but it was only after I put down the food.
Yeah. So you've just started to touch a little bit on your story, particularly kind of like the recovery and healing side of your story. Would you tell us a little bit then about what's your story before that point? Like, what had been your relationship with food and your relationship with your body before you reached this point of deciding and to change and being able to change?
Sure. My relationship with food was very, very challenging. From as far back as I can remember, being as young as 5 years old. And I don't have a lot of memories, but I do get like flashes on occasion of certain things that are so vivid to me, but they were all related to food, and how I used to literally stuff myself to a point of where I felt like I was going to explode, as early as 5 and 6 years old. And that's just not normal for a 5-year-old. That's not normal behavior. And it's not healthy behavior either. And so I struggled with food, and I recently, like in the past year or so, realized that I struggled with an eating disorder. I had binge eating disorder. And at the time, they didn't call it binge eating disorder. They called it compulsive overeating. But, you go to that next step, and it becomes BED, or binge eating disorder. And I struggled with that all through high school and all through college. So that's a lot of years. And I hated my body. I thought it never measured up, no matter how much weight I lost, because I did yo-yo a lot. And every time I lost the weight, I said, oh, this is the time I really licked it, you know, and then just to come find out that I gained it all back again. So I struggled and struggled. And then I found Overeaters Anonymous when I was 21 years old. And it changed my life in a way that helped me to see that the way that I was eating was not healthy. And I always knew that something wasn't right, you know, that I could like eat so much food, but I didn't put all the pieces together. And that's when I was first introduced to the term emotional eating. And when I heard what it actually, you know, how people describe it, I said, oh my God, that's me. Like I'm doing this every day of my life. And a lot of things started to go from there. And even though I'm no longer part of Overeaters Anonymous, I feel that it was a huge part of the beginning of my recovery process. And I'm very, very grateful that I had that exposure to it.
So you are very, as a coach, you're a great proponent of intuitive eating. You've mentioned this already, like tuning into your body and listening to your body for its cues, whether it's a cue that it's physically hungry and therefore needs to eat, or it's a cue that your body is letting you know that right now you don't need to eat. What you need to do is process something happening on an emotional level. So I know that when you come into Yes Parenting for Happy Families as a guest expert, you're going to spend your 5 days focusing on this exploration of what it means to have healthy eating for mums and kids without having rigid rules. What are some of those rigid rules that you have seen kind of happening in families with mums and kids?
Well, one of the ways I've certainly seen it manifest in my own family is that before I really learned about this intuitiveness, I used to be kind of neurotic with my son because I was also trained to be a certified health coach. So I knew about, oh, well, you need to have vegetables, you need to have this, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And all of these rules in my head about the things we should be eating daily and the things we shouldn't ever be eating. And he would eat certain things and I'd be like, oh my God, please don't eat that. It's so bad for you. You don't know what that's doing to your body and blah, blah, blah. And I was freaking him out. And at the time, I have to forgive myself because at the time I didn't realize that it was making him a little bit neurotic. So really, that intuitiveness has come since it came into my life, it's also extended to my family, and that my son knows what his body needs. So my house is stocked with pretty healthy foods. You know, like we have lots of fruits, tons of vegetables because we enjoy those things. But we also have like some baked tortilla chips that we really, really enjoy. And on occasion he'll have them, and I don't think twice about it. Whereas years ago, he'll have some chips and salsa. Whereas years ago, I've been like, oh my God, you can't have that. Wouldn't you rather have a piece of fruit instead, you know? And his answer was, no, I don't want a piece of fruit right now. And now, you know, we'll have a little bit of chips with some salsa, and he's happy and he's satisfied. He doesn't eat the whole bag. And I believe that's because we have an allowance in our home, that there are no foods that are not allowed. And even though we don't stock our home with, you know, tons and tons of junk food like cookies and all that crap, on occasion we do have cookies. And again, they stay around the whole week because we're not binging on them, because we have an allowance policy that we enjoy them, we eat them mindfully, and then we move on, you know. And then later our bodies want to have something more nutrient dense and salad. You know, his body intuitively knows what it needs, and now that he knows that, he goes for it. And I watched the process, and the neuroses has come way down, and there's no more arguing about what he's going to eat and what he's not going to eat. I mean, he is a little bit older now; he's 14, but I started to see this transformation as early as 3 years ago. So he's much more relaxed around food. And that makes me happy, because there was a time when he was neurotic, I was neurotic, and we were all very unhappy. And it was not fun at all.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and I'm so glad you're coming into the group, because food is an area that so many parents, especially mums, find challenging. And my own personal kind of like story with food with my kids is that I started off in a very controlling way, with my eldest son in particular, especially around sugar. And then when he was 3, and that was when I kind of had my epiphany, and I started really just completely changing the way that I parented. I made an awful lot of mistakes. I wouldn't change those mistakes, because I think they really helped me understand this process. But one of the things that I did do was that I just started saying yes to whatever foods he was requesting, which meant that as a 4-year-old, he had 3 months where he pretty much ate sugar for breakfast, lunch, and tea. I mean, and I remember thinking, oh my God, like, what have I done? Oh my goodness. But this voice in me said, just trust it, just trust it. And I did trust it. And I know that a lot of people think I was, pretty bonkers. And when I work with mums now, I don't tell them, oh, just have all the sugar in the world. But that was kind of what I did with my son. But I remember we went for a day trip to London, and he asked if he could have an ice cream. This was about, this was 3 months into the sugar binge. And I said, of course you can have an ice cream. And got him this ice cream. He had 3 or 4 licks. And then he said, I've had enough now. It's too sweet. I could have fallen down on the floor. I just was like, oh, like, this is the boy who has just eaten sugar constantly for like 3 months, and he's telling me something's too sweet. From that point on, and he was only 4, from that point on, he didn't lose his sweet tooth, but he became very mindful about when he had sugar, how much of it he had, not because anyone was saying to him, well, why don't you save those sweets until later? Or, have you had enough now? He just knew. And this kind of mindful relationship with sugar kind of continued. And I noticed it ebbed and flowed at times. But, things like Easter candy and Halloween candy and things like that, they would last for ages. I mean, I got to a point where I'd started throwing them out because, they were just kind of kicking around. And when he was 10, when he was 10, he decided he wanted to do a 30-day health reset called the Whole 30 with me. And part of that is that you remove all sugars from your diet, including natural sugars, honey and things. You just get rid of them all. And he learned for himself at the age of 10 that sugar was one of the food types that was not good for him. And not because I pointed it out or anything else. He just realized that by taking it out, that it had such a difference. So he now, as an 11-year-old, chooses to live without sugar for the most part. Every now and then he'll have a small amount of like jam or something like that. But mostly he's no sugar, no dairy, and about 95% gluten-free. And he absolutely doesn't have dairy because he's healed his eczema by taking dairy out of the equation. He knows that if he has dairy, that he'll get a flare-up, and he just doesn't want to flare up. With the gluten and with the sugar, he knows that he's got this tiny window that he can have a bit every now and then, and he'll be okay. But if he starts to put it into his diet consistently, then he'll become unwell. So I've really watched with him this incredible freedom with food. He eats when he's hungry, he stops when he's full, and it's been amazing. He has a very broad diet as well. My other son eats an incredibly broad diet. He loves chocolate spread sandwiches. So, he's able to have chocolate spread sandwiches whenever he wants them. But he also loves cucumbers and chicken and, chicken curry. He'll often ask for chicken curry or, meatballs or, all sorts of things. And so I watch him eating millions of chocolate spread sandwiches. And yet at the same time, I see all this other stuff he's eating and all these incredible nutrients. So, I feel so relaxed about food and my children. And I know that for me, I'm still doing the work on myself, because I'm still not yet in a place of complete food freedom. So that I'm doing that work on myself. But it's so wonderful, because this is your area of expertise. So it's so wonderful, like, hearing you kind of affirm back to me, and also to the other mums who are trying to explore this yes parenting journey, that this is the way to say yes to ourselves and to our children.
Exactly. And what you describe about your eldest son is that children are intuitive eaters naturally.
Yes.
And we all were intuitive eaters at one time or another. However, once we were introduced to all this diet dogma, and once we had all these experiences with yo-yo dieting, we lost touch with those internal cues. And when you lose touch with them, you always need someone to tell you what to eat, how much to eat, when to eat. That's what diets will do for you, because you're always in a calorie restricted mode. That's what a diet is. It's calorie restriction. So when you, like your son, I love that he is of his age and he knows what foods work for him and what foods don't.
Yeah.
You know, and when I tell people what does your body say? How do these foods make your body feel? You know, does gluten make you feel tired? Does it make you feel bloated? You know, I don't have those issues with gluten. I have been gluten-free, and I didn't notice any real significant difference. But some people are so sensitive that, you know, they eat certain foods and they immediately notice, oh, I don't feel well. I feel really like bleh, you know, but not everybody's in touch with that. And the other thing is that not everybody's willing to do what they need to do to find out. You know, like sometimes there's an elimination process involved, which not everyone is willing to go through. But your son had eczema, and he cleared his eczema by getting rid of dairy, which is like, when anyone has eczema, the first thing I ask is, are you eating dairy? Are you eating dairy, and are you consuming gluten? Because those are the two offenders for so many allergies that people have.
Right.
So I think it's awesome, because your point is excellent. Kids are natural intuitive eaters, and we were too. And this process is reawakening our intuitive eater. It's really, we all have it in us. It's just a matter of reawakening it, because it's been dormant from all the years of dieting that we've done.
Right. And it's interesting, because when you're talking about dieting, I have two things going on in my head. One is like jumping into the dieting camp in terms of what my mum has done. But the other, from my yes parenting perspective and as a parenting coach, is this dieting dogma that comes in so kind of like subtly, like a little bit like a thief through the back door, when, you know, when we're trying to teach our children when they're really little about what foods are good and what foods are bad. And, you know, you need to, you know, eat your vegetables and then we'll have pudding. And, you know, it's so subtle, and we so often we don't even notice that we're doing it, because we actually think by doing those things, we're doing the best thing for our family. And I think that this is going to be something that a lot of the mums in the Yes Parenting for Happy Families group are going to just love to just pick your brains about and grab your expertise, because I know that this is an area that comes up again and again and again. And I just can't wait for you to bring all of this into the group. So is there anything else just in this interview now that you would like to share, just to help the mums who choose to watch this video before you're in the group, that would just give them a greater sense of knowing who you are or what you're about or what you want to bring to the group when you come into it?
That's a great question. I want them to know that any question is welcome, and that there's absolutely no judgment for me whatsoever. Because if you've seen what I've done and where I've been with my food, you'd be like, okay, I can tell her anything. truly mean that. You know, people, alcoholics and addicts always have these horrible stories. I have some horrible stories too. But I'm thankful for all of them, because they've honestly gotten me to where I am today, to a place of understanding in my own body, and a place where I can help others and share that with others so that they feel comfortable and safe. So the other thing I would share is to, like you've already said, you allowed your son to have that 3+ month, binge, sugar binge. And on the other side of it is having the trust that they will come out of it. Eventually, their bodies will be like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't feel good anymore. And trust that that will come. And 3 months can seem like 3 years, but it will happen. And that we have to do our best to trust the process, that this is something, when our bodies need nutrients, they will tell us what they need. And we have to trust that sometimes it takes a little bit longer than we would like, but that it will come. So just kind of hang back, watch the process, and at the same time, have balance in the home, and I think also that's what's important also is to model.
Yes.
Modeling is so important. I'm sure that's the pinnacle of yes parenting is, I'm not sitting around eating cookies all day,
Right.
I eat the foods that nourish my body because that's what my body craves at this stage of my life. And my son does something very, very similar. And so does my husband for that matter, we all eat pretty well, and when I do have cookies, like I sit down, it's pretty rare, but I do sometimes want a good chocolate chip cookie and I enjoy it. And I sit down with my nice glass of almond milk and I break it up into pieces and I dunk and I say, this is so good. And I can eat one cookie now, and that's enough for me.
Right.
And I don't need to have a whole dozen cookies like I used to. And that's the beauty of this recovery, is that I can eat those things because I allow them, and I only need one.
Yeah.
Coming from my history, that's a miracle. That's a miracle.
Yeah, I think I think there are elements of my history that must be quite similar to yours, and because there were times when I would be eating like 9,000 calories in a day, and so I completely understand that. Like, well, for me it was ice cream, 2 or 3 tubs of Ben and Jerry's ice cream in one sitting, but when you talk about modeling, it is such a key principle of yes parenting, and the way I talk about it is to be the change that you want to see in your children. Absolutely. And so when it comes to food and eating, when a parent is feeling stressed about their child's eating, I will say, well, how's your relationship with food? Mm-hmm. And it goes across into other areas. If a parent is stressing out about how messy their child is, I'll say, well, how tidy is your stuff? You go tidy your stuff first. So it's the same principle about being the change you want to see in your children, and that's the modeling. And there was one other thing as well that came to mind when you were talking about this process of trusting our children. And sometimes that 3 months can feel like 3 years, and but I remember somebody said to me, it's a little bit like if you were invited to a banquet and there was this huge table with every food and drink and everything you could ever imagine on it, all the savory, all of the sweet. And you were told that you could, have whatever you like. It's never going to run out. Just come and help yourself. The first time you go up to that table, you are going to pile your plate as high as possible. And then the second time you go, you might not pile it quite so much, but you're still not going to trust that it's all going to be there. But after a certain period of time, you start to realize that that food isn't running out. Like, all of that food is still available to you. So then you can go to that table and you can look at it and you can be like, yeah, that chocolate brownie looks amazing, but that's not what I want right now. I really want those figs, or, I want that, I don't know, whatever it is. But, and for me, that was such a helpful picture to have in my head, was that to realize, for as long as my children perceived restriction around food, that somehow that food would be taken away or it would run out, the more they wanted it. As they began to trust that that food would be available, the less it just didn't have power anymore. It stopped being exciting. And so, I mean, I don't know how you talk about this with mums and with your clients, but, I really encourage parents, to do away with the concept of food as a treat. Food is, from a yes parenting perspective, right? Food is food. Food is what we use to fuel our bodies, to nourish our bodies. We enjoy it. A chocolate brownie doesn't have to be a treat. it can just be this joyful experience, you know. And yeah, so there's so much in this topic, and I know that the other area which we haven't really talked about today is about the judgment that we have of ourselves, and also about like body shame. So I know that those are also strings to your bow. So it's been so wonderful talking with you, Michelle, and I can't wait to. Well, I won't be there personally to welcome you into the group because I'll be on holiday, but I can't wait for you to be in the group. And I know that the group will welcome you because they're such a lovely bunch of mums. And then I will be able to come back from my holiday and go through all the posts and join in then. So thank you for your time today. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you in the group.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun, and I'm really excited to get to know your moms better. And I'm excited to field their questions. And just so ask away, I'll be there, and I want to serve, you know, and I'm happy to do this for you.
Thank you.